There's no way. I mean, no way. When I first saw this watch, I thought there is no way you can get all of this for $250. Now, this is not a paid advertisement. I bought this watch with my own money because I had to see it in person. And I wanted to get this review out quickly because, well, frankly, I am really excited. So stick around. We're going to take a look at this Angleman watch and take a step back and ask a serious question. I mean, $250 for what? I mean, what's the catch? Well, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for being here. If you're a returning viewer and you've been to my channel before, then you know I'm not a huge Homage, or in this case, clomage fan. But I saw this watch on another YouTuber channel and I knew I had to try it myself. Now, my favorite watch in the quote unquote looks category is the Sin 857. I've been on the fence for buying one for many years. And frankly, the only reason why I've never pulled the trigger on one is that they're just a little too big at 43 millimeters. I have owned a couple of Sins, but just the 103 models. But I've always hoped that Sin would release a 39 or 40 millimeter 857. That was like my ultimate dream watch. Now, in Sin's defense, they once had a model called the 657, which is a 41 millimeter version of the 857, in which I've always kept an eye out on the secondary market, but I've never found one that was priced right, that was in good enough condition, because these watches are pretty highly sought after. I don't think they were made for very many years. But let's go back to the Angleman. When I saw what was being offered and the price it was being offered, I knew I had to try it myself. So let me go back and say this again. I am not a huge fan of Homage watches, let alone clomage watches. And if you look at the entire site of this Chinese company, Angleman, they have literally copied almost the entire line of popular Sin watches. But not only did they just copy some of our most favorite models, they also incorporated a lot of the technology that we, as watch enthusiasts, always admired about Sin, like the scratch resistance coating, the anti-magnetism. But you can also get these watches with a bracelet, quick release on the bracelet, a micro adjust on the clasp, all for just $250. That's cheaper than buying just the bracelet for an actual Sin watch separately off the Sin site. What I'm going to do from here, I'm going to take a good look at this watch, give you my opinion based on the watch itself, its fit and finish, and then you can ask yourself, is this watch right for you? So let's start with the watch. This is the Wraith UTC model, and there's one simple reason why I just didn't get the three-hand version, the model that looks like a 40 millimeter Sin 857. See, some of these watches have Japanese movements and some of them have Chinese movements. Since I am unfamiliar with Chinese movements, and I know if I decided to keep this watch longer term, I could easily service and or swap out the Seiko NH movement if needed, and I wanted to have that option. So if you go to the top of the Engleman website and you go to genre, click on movement. You can pick from a selection of movements. You'll notice the NH36 movement is in two watches that look like the Sin 104 models. And if you click NH34, you have several choices to choose from. The closest to the Sin 857 is the Wraith UTC, in my opinion. When you click on the watch, you have several options, from the color of the lume, to bracelet or no bracelet, to the type of packaging. I chose blue lume with a bracelet with the economy packaging. Now, when you handle the watch in person, the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, this watch is solid. I was very impressed with the watch initially. The case, the finishing was just amazing. But after closer inspection and removing the bracelet, I did realize that the bracelet was inferior to the rest of the watch. Now, in regards to the bracelet, the fit of the end links are perfect. The quick release allows me to take off and put on the bracelet with ease, just like this. But the links, the tolerances are pretty loose, which makes the bracelet a little flimsy, and the clasp is fairly big and bulky, but very well made and finished, especially for this price. The whole bracelet is smooth and very comfortable to wear overall. But I've also handled many Sinn watches in my lifetime, and one of my Sinn 103s had the H-Link bracelet, so I feel that I may have higher expectations than most people, especially if you've never handled a Sinn. Frankly, I think most of you would be fairly impressed with the bracelet because this is really just a nitpick overall. One of the things I did notice is they have these screws that they lock, which is a really nice touch at this price point. Also, under the clasp, you have a quick adjust, which I've noticed many Chinese brands do this anyway nowadays. But what I decided to do is take the watch off the bracelet and wear it how I would normally, or I would prefer to wear this watch, which is with a NATO strap. And this is where I was really impressed. See, the watch head itself, it feels extremely high quality. The AR treatment on the sapphire crystal is magnificent. I haven't looked under a loupe yet, but the dial is matte black and pretty well done. It's hard to beat the styling of these watches. The contrast of the dial and the white sword hands are super legible, which if you've seen on most of my watches in my personal collection, that's pretty much a prerequisite. Great legibility. And I also have to mention, if you haven't noticed, this is the GMT, and the small GMT hand with the 24-hour military time is on the inner workings of the dial, and it's discreet but legible enough to read clearly the second time zone. Now, obviously, I can't credit Angleman in the styling here, but what they've done is a great job of fitting this complication in a 40mm smaller package, which I'm going to discuss the dimensions in just a bit. And the Angleman, they go the extra length to include a color matched date wheel with the lume color that you chose. And I didn't even tell you about the lume yet. The lume on this watch is utterly insane. I have no idea what type of lume they actually use, but it is phenomenal, at least initially. They say it's a custom developed hyperglow mix, which it is pretty hyper as far as how bright it glows, especially initially. And what you're also going to notice is at the bottom of the dial is the print which says made by Angleman, which is nice. Instead of saying made in China or something like that. The crown, it is a screw down crown with a logo. The rest of the case is finished really well. No rough edges, and even has, the holes in the lugs that make it easy for strap changes. Speaking of which, let me give you a little strap show on how I've been wearing this watch. I do want to talk about the diameter of the Wraith, which is in a 40mm case with a lug-to-lug distance of 48mm and lug width of 20mm. The case thickness is 3.9mm, which is pretty thick for a 40mm case, and that's to house that NH34 movement. Now, when you're wearing this watch on your wrist without the bracelet, it is pretty stocky. But if you saw my Sin 103 chronograph review. That 40mm watch comes in over 15 millimeters, but that has the Valjoux 750 movement. So it's not uncommon for a sim to be this thick. Just be aware. There are two drawbacks to the watch. In my opinion, the first one is the bezel action. It's aligned perfectly, but the bezel action is not the best I've ever felt. It is 120 click. It is a unidirectional bezel. Now on a pilot watch, I would love to have seen a bidirectional bezel. And the last thing is the drilled lug holes, as I mentioned earlier. I love that the Wraith has them, but they reside really close to the case. So putting on a NATO strap requires a strap that has to be very thin. It can't be very thick. It's going to be really tough to stick a thick NATO between the pin bar and the case. I did mention that this watch is made from a scratch resistant coating, which ranges from 900 to 1000 HV on a Vickers hardness test. And you can see right now I'm trying to scratch the inside of the watch link, and this scratch resistance protection is really no joke. The watch also is anti-magnetic. Even though I didn't test it personally, they have videos on their YouTube channel showing the anti-magnetic testing. I mean, I don't know what else to say about the watch. It's amazing, especially for the price. So you all are at home and you're going to have your own feelings on whether you're able to even want or wear a Homage or clomage watch. Now, I've been a watch enthusiast since the 1980s when I was a teenager, and I love watches. And I love brands that have forged the path over the years and has made this hobby of ours really fun, interesting, and exciting. Companies like Sin, I've always appreciated. So inside and internally, I struggle with wearing a watch like the Angleman, which is basically just copying this amazing legacy brand and offering watches like this at a serious competitive price. But see, that's my own internal struggle, and I'm very well aware of that. So where do you stand on Homage or clomage watches, like San Martin or Angleman or any of these Chinese brands? Like I said, typically it's not my thing, but in this case, I am so impressed that I might just keep this one as my daily beater. I mean, look at it. It's undeniably beautiful. Well, if you made it this far, let me introduce myself. My name is Blake, and I'm a bit of a watchaholic. And if you made it this far, I'm going to assume you are a watchaholic too. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and stick around for the next one that's coming up soon. You guys have a great day. I'll catch you in the next video.